Naturally, I just filmed this whole review and forgot to film record, so now is take two. Today, I'm finally going to be reviewing The Enchanted by Renee Denfeld. Those of you who've watched my past, 2 or 3 TBRs will know just how unreasonably long I have been waiting to read this. I was on my library's waiting list to get the ebook over on my Kindle through for such a long time. It statistically just didn't make sense with the weeks I was waiting and the copies that were available. I know I should have just purchased the ebook, but I'm just a stubborn person and I just thought I couldn't give up waiting. But once I get back to the States, I will definitely be purchasing a physical copy of this. So as a lot of you might know, I was particularly interested in reading this because of the rave reviews of Jenny over at Adultish Books, and I also saw a really good review, I think it was Rincey over at Rincey. I don't know what that southern accent was that was popping out for a second, from Rincey over at Rincey Reads, so I will link their videos down below. So The Enchanted is told from the point of view of a man who is awaiting his death essentially on death row at a horrific prison, and when I say horrific I mean the physical conditions, but also there's a fair amount of corruption going on, of course, inside the prison as well. This is a very difficult book to describe, and hopefully I won't just confuse you guys when I attempt to, and I won't spoil anything. But the book is told in some ways only from his perspective, but in other ways it's also told from the perspective of 4 or 5 other people as well. What I mean by that is, this man, for whatever reason, he knows the thoughts of other people, he knows what they're doing in their day-to-day lives, their backstories. So say, for example, the other major perspective is of a woman he just calls the Lady, and she is an investigator. She's hired by lawyers to try and search through men's lives when they were young and to just try and find some reason to get them off of death row. So you're learning about her investigations and her childhood and her thoughts, and those sections are told from the third-person perspective through him about what she's doing. Hopefully that made sense, probably not. Some of the other characters you really get to know are the priest who works on the death row, the warden, and then there's also a 16-year-old boy who has just arrived at prison, not on death row in the general population, and so you're learning about his struggles integrating into the prison. So as this is a book about people on death row and the people who work at the prison, it's no surprise that this is an incredibly heavy book. There are a lot of incredibly depressing, difficult aspects of the book to read. I know a lot of people, when there are certain things in books, will give trigger warnings, and I would give a trigger warning for most things that exist out there, because this book does just deal with so much, even though it is quite short. The one thing I will say about all the different physical and mental violence in many different ways that occurs in the book is it's not presented to you in great detail. It's most of it is actually left unsaid. For instance, one incredibly smart thing that she does is a lot of these men on death row, you vaguely, very vaguely know what they did. You know it was horrifying, but that isn't even explicitly said. I see this technique done in a lot of actually horror movies and horror novels, where say for example, the director won't show you the monster, which might seem a bit silly considering that's the focus of the movie, but it leaves the reader, it leaves the viewer to create their own personal horror. We all obviously have different imaginations, we all have different perspectives of what the worst thing someone could do is, so it kind of leaves the reader to create that in their mind. So at this point in the review, I think a lot of you are probably wondering, Katie, you're not doing a very good job of getting me to try and read this book. And yes, it does deal with incredibly heavy subject matter. It is very difficult to read, but I think that's balanced out a bit by the fact that it's told from the perspective of this man who calls the prison enchanted. He sees the kind of physical, mental, emotional beauty in this place, in the people, and it's such a unique perspective. He's one of the strangest and most wonderful characters I have ever read. It was some of the most beautiful writing I have read in such a long time. Incredibly, incredibly poetic, especially his sections. Yes, the book is sad, but if it looks like I'm about to cry, that's not actually because of this book. I read it over a week ago. It's because my allergies are acting up, I swear. Now this next part, I wish I would have known going into the book because it would have been good to know. I didn't find out until the end of the book at the Q&A. But Renee Denfeld actually, in reality, her day-to-day job is the job that the Lady has in this book. She is that investigator going to death row, trying to free these men. So knowing that this book is written by someone who knows this subject matter so well, I think also really adds to it. This is one of those books where it's so good, it makes you want to go through and almost take a half-star or star off of all of the other books you've read so far this year, because it just puts itself in a completely different league. You guys know, even if I really enjoyed a book, I really enjoyed The Miniaturist, I always have critiques and at least something that I wish had been tweaked. With this book, I was sitting here and I really couldn't think of one thing that I would have wanted to have changed. So I really hope you guys check this book out. Please let me know what you thought of it if you read it as well, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.